receiving Jocelyne Ozdoba. I see Jocelyne in here in line. So welcome, Jocelyne. Jocelyne, she's an ESSEC alumni. She's a role model for all of us. She has been working for a while in sustainability, and now she's a director in a consultancy leading with sustainable finance. So without much further ado, welcome, Jocelyne. You have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Adrian, for the invitation. So I'm Jocelyne Ozdoba. I'm a sustainability director at Ailancy. And just to introduce myself and my background, I started in finance consulting, so really management consulting specialized in the financial industry. And then I switched to sustainability consulting for a few years. And since September, I'm back to finance consulting. And I have a heavy carbon footprint myself because I've lived in about 10 countries and traveled way too much for this planet, but also I like it very much. And so a few words about Ailancy. So Ailancy is a management consulting firm specialized in financial services, and its business lines really cover all the businesses of the industry: retail, banking, asset management, CIB, insurance, and we asset management, and so on. And we have some transversal business lines, among which sustainability and sustainable finance. And so, yes, about what we do, we work on business strategy, a lot of compliance and regulatory projects, transformation projects, IT projects, and a lot of projects around digitalization. And so on sustainable finance, our offer, I'm sorry if it's in French, but covers basically our main business line. So the idea is that sustainable finance is currently at a stage where the projects and the needs are more and more specialized and ask for a lot of expertise. And so we try to really combine both the sustainability expertise with the business expertise, whereas in retail, banking, asset management, insurance, and so on. And so the type of projects we've done so far are for, around the implementation of new regulation or the setup of ESG strategies for in the financial sector. And so just a quick reminder, because I suggested to Adrian that today maybe we cover the EU Action Plan on Sustainable Finance and Sustainable Finance Regulation. I really like this graph, which is quite used in the field of responsible investing. Is just to remind ourselves that today companies can have different approaches related to sustainability. Some companies, and unfortunately most of them, they still do or may cause harm, meaning they have a negative impact on the environment or society, or on some aspects. Most of them know they act to avoid harm, and this is really pushed by regulation, but it can also be the approach, and generally speaking, ESG ratings focus on what the companies put in place to manage these negative impacts, and is this integrated in the management approach? Are there some objectives, indicators to track the negative impacts and to work on them? then you've heard a lot about entreprises à mission or B Corps and so on. Companies, generally speaking, they want to be positive for the world, and they want to think that their activity is useful. And so this is also one aspect of the approach. And the last one, which is really key in everything that's going on right now in the field, is really to contribute to solution. Meaning it's not only that I want to be a little bit less bad or that I want to diminish my negative impacts, but it's really through my business model, through what I do, my capacities, my expertise, and so on, I will contribute to solutions through my offer of products and services. And so what we've seen so far in the finance industry and in the way the industry was approaching sustainability was kind of a mix or some a lack of clarity on why do we finance this counterpart and which aspect of sustainability am I looking when I finance a counterpart or when I invest in a counterpart. And so as we'll see, the EU action plan on sustainable finance and all the EU regulation really aims at bringing some clarity across the value chain. And so I guess in your sustainability class, you've talked a lot about companies and what they do and how they disclose on sustainability. And indeed, this is really a key aspect and let's say a tool or an input to anything you want to do in sustainable finance. You need the data, you need information on the sustainability practices within the companies. But the EU regulation on sustainable finance goes beyond this. And it's really to say from households and individual investors through institutional investors and all the actors in the value chain of the financial system consider really formally and professionally these sustainability aspects when you make a decision. And I'm not going to go in the details of this graph, but you see really all the actors of the financial systems, and each of them basically has its regulation. So it's not one regulation, it's a regulatory package that really impacts all the actors of the financial system. And yes, with three objectives on the right. The first one is to reorient capital flows towards sustainable investment. And here again, we could discuss on what's sustainable investment, but the key goal is going back to the previous graph, is really this dark green area. A recent study from the World Economic Forum states that we need to triple by 2030 and quadruple by 2050 as the volumes of really impact investment and sustainable investment in terms of investing in activities that contribute to solutions. And so this is really key. And indeed, if you don't have any clarity on how or your investment is sustainable, it's really hard to monitor this reorienting of capital flows, but also to make decisions about it. The other aspect is to mainstream sustainability into risk management. So we've talked a lot about climate risk and how not only the physical risk of heating, of floods, of natural disasters, but also the transition risk, meaning that there are some activities that today exist, but tomorrow, within 10, 20, 30 years, won't exist anymore. And so this, of course, has a huge impact on the financial stability of the system and on each of the banks and actors in the financial industry. And so there are some methods to integrate this risk and really track how the counterparts really prepare for these risks. And I guess you've talked a lot about sustainability reporting in this class, but transparency is really a key element of it throughout the value chain. And so we knew transparency for corporate, for companies through corporate sustainability reporting, but with this new regulation, all of the actors throughout the value chain are asked to be more transparent about their approach, about how they integrate, and so it's really and this transparency has to go to the final investor. So it's not only something quite technical for experts, but we really want this information to be available and understandable by anyone who might invest in a fund or a life insurance product. And so unless there are some questions at this stage.
Please feel free to ask questions. It's the opportunity to do so. You can also put questions by the chat if you prefer.
Okay. Let me look at this.
I could put one question myself. So it's this package of regulation, because not only one regulation, it's an ambitious, unprecedented set of regulations. Well, there are discussions. Do you think it's feasible because it's very ambitious, and they also point to having two, flows which are going to be green, finance flows which are going to be green. So capitals, greener capitals and less greener capitals. Which is your take?
Well, the lever at the moment is really through transparency. So we'll go back to it, but it's really for companies to be transparent about their share of green activities, and then investors to be transparent about their share of green investment. And so the projects that are being implemented at the moment is really to put this information in the system. And it's quite complex regarding the lack of data or the lack of the quality issues on the current data. And so I think it's feasible, it's very complex, and there is also the risk of a missed opportunity, because I'm not sure that in 5 years or in 10 years the EU Commission will go that far if this reform is a failure. And so it's also something that I'm really careful about, is how are the actors implementing all this. And there is a risk to implement new processes or way of doing things that are completely absurd and lose the point and lose the final objectives, because basically everyone is busy and has its own let's say priorities, or so sometimes they just implement what's the quickest or the easiest or the less costly, and also they implement some of the bricks without having the full picture of what needs to be done within, for example, the banking groups and the different activities of the banking groups, in order for it to be consistent and reach the final objectives. So I'm not saying it's, well, I'm not betting on a full success of the approach, but the main value, I think, is that people that so far hadn't been involved at all in the field of sustainability are entering in the game. And so that's really interesting to see marketing teams, to see product teams, or just operational teams trying to find solutions and implement these new approaches.
This is very promising, yes, and yes, opportunity to mainstream.
Exactly. And so maybe to review a bit more in detail, so that you will just be familiar with it, because whereas you join a company or you join a bank or a financial institution, certainly at some point you will be confronted to some aspects of this regulation, which is really broad. The first one is a taxonomy for sustainable activities. I don't know if you mentioned it during the class, but it's really a repository of what's a sustainable activity. And for this, not only a sustainable activity contribute to something sustainable, like climate change mitigation or biodiversity preservation, but also it doesn't harm something else. It doesn't harm another environmental aspects. For example, I don't know if you've seen the documentary on Arte, but there's been a lot of buzz around renewables and how some of the materials used for renewables, whereas windmills or solar power energy are really bad for the environment and some of the communities in the countries that are extracted. So it's really to have a positive, sustainable impact without harming another aspect of the environment and without harming, the human rights, and so being also respectful of all the human and labor aspects. And so it's really dense. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages, and for each activity you have really precise criteria. For example, electric vehicles, you might think these are sustainable, but yes, they are sustainable if they are not too heavy, for example. And so this has been built by a group of experts, so scientists, economists, and it's really, the state of the art of what are sustainable activities. And this didn't exist before. So every bank had its own approach to assess what was sustainable or not sustainable. And the first assessment, like a pilot that has been done, states that about 8% of the French bank's assets are sustainable. And we don't expect 100, but we would like more like 20, 30. And so with this indicator, so every company by next year will have to publish its share of sustainable activity in terms of turnover and capital expenditure. And then the investors and the banks will have to publish their share of sustainable financing according to these data. And so you can imagine that technically it's a lot of complexity to compute, gather, and treat this data. But it's going to be really something new, because you will also be able to compare the share of sustainable investing within, for example, different banking groups, or And so this is really the ground and really a key aspect of the regulation. Then standards and labels for green financial products. Currently, you have in each country, in France, Luxembourg, Germany, you have some labeling organization, but their criteria are really aren't homogeneous, and so the EU regulation will, and especially on the financings and the funds that are labeled as green, so in France it's Greenfin, will create a EU eco-label like you have for your washing machine, but for the funds, so at the financial product level. So the third one is towards the infrastructure sector, which is quite specific. The fourth one is incorporating sustainability when providing financial advice. So I'm not sure if you have big savings account and you need to invest your money, but if you go and talk to your banker about, okay, I have 10K, I want to invest, it's not sure that he will propose you a green product or SRI product, socially responsible investing product. And if he proposes to you, most certainly he has no idea if you ask him, and why is it green or why is it socially responsible, might not be able to tell you. And so this, and it's a SFDR, Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, that impose to distributors in the retail banking and private banking to really have specific processes in place to ask the clients for their ESG preferences. So which share of green, do you want some green? Which share of green do you want? If you're interested in some ESG aspects, what matters to you? Is it human rights? Is it biodiversity? And then to make sure they have, if the clients has such appetence, that they have some products to sell them. So sustainability benchmarks, the fifth one is something quite specific. You know that how benchmarks are used in finance. And there are, again, a lot of discrepancies on how the sustainability benchmark work. So there will be a European standards and on sustainability benchmarks. Integrating sustainability in rating and market research. There are a lot of ESG rating companies, Sustainalytics, MSCI, and so on. Most of them have been acquired by American companies. So there is a key issue on the European presence on this market. And so, and also there's been a lot of criticism because, financial rating agencies are quite regulated and sustainability rating agencies are less. So again, it's to harmonize the criteria, foster transparency, and so on. Yeah, and maybe the eighth, incorporating sustainability in prudential requirement. So you've heard about Basel II, Solvency II, so the regulation that imposes to banks and insurance companies to hold some assets to cover their risk. The idea is really to take into account the point one, so their share of real green investment in the way the capital requirements are determined. And the 9 is towards sustainability disclosure. So everyone is aware that without disclosure, none of this can work. because we need companies and all the economic actors to disclose about correctly and professionally about sustainability in order to integrate this in decision-making over the value chain. And so the EU Commission has appointed the EFRAG to draft some sustainability reporting norms. And what's interesting is that these norms will really bring into the sustainability debate some financial and risk aspects and logics and methods. So we'll talk about risk and opportunities of sustainability on business, and how sustainability indeed has to be managed from a classic risk management point of view by companies, and again with really a lot of professionalism. So you will hear of it, maybe you will work on it in the near future. And I thought it was interesting also because in this class, I think you talk a lot about sustainability disclosure, to highlight how sustainability disclosure and quality sustainability disclosure will be key in the future.
Thank you a lot, Jocelyne. Thank you for your time. I know you have to go to some other activity, but I appreciate a lot that you could visit us. Just I know not to take too much time from you, my appreciation or thanks for having come here. Maybe you don't know, we have in the third module the interview that you gave us 3 years ago, and maybe you don't know that it's one of the most viewed interviews in so it's so in the third so this is something by students are not yet in that
yes,
but they're going to see it.
At the time, I was trying to convince people how sustainability reporting was indeed important, but I think now it's confirmed, and it's not an easy field or an easy task, but it's important to keep working on this field.
And it changes fast. It's a fast-moving field.
Exactly.
Thank you a lot, Jocelyne. Hope
Thanks, everyone.
See you soon. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.